The family did a little bit of spring cleaning around the house before Brighton and Frankie were going on the honeymoon with Maxwell and Laura. The boys were surprised that they were even invited. Little did they know they were only invited so that they would have to clean around the house instead of Maxwell having to pay for maid. Michael and Lucille were going to miss the boys terribly, especially because Frankie was going to age up to a teen while he was gone, and they would miss it. When they returned home, it was also a time for Rebecca to age up to a toddler, the youngest wild child. Maxwell and Laura were excited to spend their honeymoon on a destination trip to Italy. As soon as their bags were unpacked, they quickly jumped into doing what honeymooners do. The boys hung out outside to escape the sound. Little did they know, right below them was their aunt Imagine, who fled to Italy after failing their uncle. Maxwell told Laura he was taking the boys out for dinner to celebrate Frankie's birthday and asked her to stay home so they could have quality time together. In reality, he took them to a club and proceeded to leave them in a room alone and ignore them. While he flirted and made out with multiple Italian women.
Hey mama, welcome to the 60s. Mama, welcome to the 60s.
Frankie aged up. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you our first evil heir. Welcome to the 60s.
Welcome to the rhythm of a brand new day. Take your old-fashioned fears and throw them away.
Michael met with one of his friends in the Senate, Senator John F. Kennedy. John had just secured the Democratic nomination for the upcoming presidential election. He invited Michael and his wife over to his house for a dinner party to celebrate. He told Tess she could come as well. Tess was absolutely floored to be able to go to the Kennedy estate. Tess immediately took Lucille out shopping. She told her if she ever wanted to become good friends with Jackie Kennedy, she needed to up her style to impress her. Lucille was desperate for friends, so she agreed. Hello 1960s Lucille. She got new outfits for every day, formal, athletic, and warm weather to keep up with current fashion trends. They also bought Michael a new everyday, party, warm weather, and formal outfit. Meanwhile, back in Italy, the boys spent most of their days alone in their room. Michael and Lucille headed to the Kennedy estate for the dinner party. Lucille met Jackie Kennedy, and the two immediately got along. While she knew that Jackie's husband was the Democratic nominee, Lucille didn't know that she was speaking to the future First Lady of the United States. Michael and John got along as well. John mentioned wanting Michael to be in his cabinet if he won. The two lovebirds had a blast at the party.
I done counted 10, lost my temper and went back to 4. I know sometimes it's hard to realize I'm the man.
But back in Italy, Maxwell and Frankie were butting heads hourly. Maxwell constantly played pranks on his eldest son. Frankie yelled at his father that he hated him. Maxwell then threatened that he would give Frankie something to hate him about before he began beating him over and over. In his head, Frankie began to plot revenge against his father as he went to go lie down. The honeymoon continued on in Italy. The newlyweds occupied most main areas in the home. The boys were banned to spend most of the days either in their room or outside. While Maxwell was living his best life, Frankie was plotting his revenge against him. On one rainy day, the family went out to explore shops downtown. While the boys waited for Laura while she was in a jewelry store, Maxwell all of a sudden heard a voice that he would recognize anywhere. It was Imagine. He watched her closely. Once she settled, he immediately knew he had to approach her. When Imagine saw Maxwell sit down across from her, her blood ran cold. He told her that he knew it was her, and he knew she did something to Bert. Imagine asked how he found her and threatened to send him to go see Bert face to face. When she went to leave, Maxwell jumped up at the same time as her. He grabbed her and said he never wanted to lose sight of her again, so took her back to the rental home. At home, he demanded to know what she did to Bert, but when she wouldn't say anything, he continued to beat her. Imagine told him to go fuck himself. Maxwell told her he'd be holding her captive and taking her back to the US, where he'd keep her as a expat forever. Maxwell didn't think anyone saw him not wanting Laura to hear. But there was one witness. Imagine tried to get up and run, but Maxwell was faster. She was scared she would never see Romeo or her infant son ever again. Maxwell urged her until she passed out. Maxwell kept Imagine locked in a spare room in the rental home. He knew he needed to move her though to avoid suspicion from Laura. He woke her up from the drug-induced sleep he put her in and ended up taking her from the home. Meanwhile, back in the States, Rebecca aged up to a child. Rebecca is self-assured. They tip her down to their favorite diner for a celebratory birthday dinner. Rebecca wished her brothers were with her to celebrate her birthday. Michael and Lucille assured her that the boys should be back home in a few days. They both hoped that the boys were having fun in Italy and that Maxwell was taking care of them. Michael then began talking about work with the girls and that he was excited to be helping Senator Kennedy's presidential campaign. Back in Italy, Frankie was psyching himself up as he wanted to talk to his dad about gaining independence from him. Maxwell had taken Imagine to a hidden cave so no one would find her. Imagine stood off alone for a few minutes trying to think what to do. She then tried to beg Maxwell for her freedom. He told her that her tears would get her nowhere. Unsure what else she could do, Imagine then resorted to violence and tried to beat him up. Unfortunately, her wounds weakened her and she lost the fight. Maxwell told her she soon would be back in the States and with him forever. Frankie appeared as Imagine begged God to keep her husband and baby safe. Frankie said neither Imagine or Maxwell would ever be returning to the States. He told his father he had been waiting for this his whole life while he told his aunt Imagine to run. Imagine quickly limped out of the cave and left while the men fought. Frankie then pretended that he was going to leave. But in reality he went behind his father's back and pulled out a G and shooting him D. Frankie then walked out of the cave, leaving his father's body to rot where no one would find it. Romeo was getting concerned that he had not seen Imagine in days. Even though the two had a fight, he never said that he would be leaving her, and he realized how much he missed her when she was gone. He hoped her disappearance didn't mean that she left him. He was relieved when the doors opened and she walked in, but then immediately concerned when he saw that she was covered in BLD and bruises. She told him what happened to her through tears, explaining her true life in America and how abusive Maxwell was. Romeo was sympathetic and forgave her for lying. He was glad she was home and promised to keep her safe now. She was scared to be alone and asked him to help her clean off the BL0D. She was then so relieved to be reunited with her son, Antonio. Frankie arrived back at the vacation rental. When he walked back in, Laura asked if he had seen Maxwell since she hadn't seen him all day. Frankie lied and told her that he had gone out to the club with his father, and Maxwell met a younger, hotter woman, so was leaving Laura. Laura bought it knowing the kind of guy Maxwell was, and she was devastated. Frankie told Laura that she deserved every bit of unhappiness and bitterness for the rest of her life, and he was glad that she was no longer his stepmother. Laura screamed that he was an asshole just like his father. Frankie went upstairs and told Brighton that they would be leaving to go home tomorrow and that he would probably never see his father again. Brighton was confused but had no relationship with his father anyway. In the morning, the boys met with Imagine and Romeo to say farewell before going back home. Imagine thanked him for saving her. He told her that she would never have to worry about Maxwell again. Imagine asked Frankie to tell his mother that she was safe and happy and to not worry about her and that she loved her. He promised he would. The boys arrived home back in the United States. Michael and Lucille were surprised to see them home early. Brighton told his parents that Maxwell and Laura made them leave early and weren't coming home ever again. Lucille thought that was weird but decided to drop it for now. Frankie went to his room where he reminisced on the feeling of ending his father's life and for some reason craved to do it again. At school, Wendy broke the news to Frankie that she was pregnant. He did not take the news well. He recommended they needed to make this right and enter into a formal relationship, and when they were old enough get married. Wendy said no, them sleeping together was just a one-time thing, and she had a boyfriend. She felt bad enough for cheating on her boyfriend Hunter in a heat-of-the-moment thing, and she did not want to leave him. Frankie did not understand. Wendy assured they could still be friends. Wendy walked away and went back to her boyfriend. Hunter asked her if she was okay and who she was talking to. She told him not to worry about it. Frankie loomed in the background upset. After school, he went and found Hunter shooting hoops in the school gym. He told Hunter that he needed to back off his girl. Hunter was confused. He had been dating Wendy for 2 years. Frankie asked him if they were such a serious couple, then why was Wendy pregnant with his baby? Hunter was shocked. He said he did not want to talk to Frankie about it and will talk to Wendy. Frankie warned him not to talk to his girl anymore. He suddenly felt that same feeling come over him when he was arguing with his father. Without being able to control himself, he beat Hunter's head on the ground until he passed. He quickly removed the body from the gym before anyone found him and buried him in the back of the school. He went as far as to forge a letter from Hunter to Wendy where he explained he was moving away and they would need to break up due to long distance. He then went upstairs and slipped the note into Wendy's locker for her to find in the morning. That evening, Wendy came over to Frankie's apartment, having no idea he just killed her boyfriend an hour earlier. Together, they decided that they needed to tell Frankie's parents about her pregnancy. Frankie was nervous that his parents would be mad at him. As expected, Lucille and Michael were furious. Lucille cried that this could ruin their lives. Michael was upset that if the public found out this could hurt his career. Michael recommended they either needed to give the baby up for adoption or they needed to get rid of the pregnancy. Wendy refused. She wanted to be a mother.
You belong to me.
In the morning, Michael and Lucille were still so much in shock from finding out they were soon be grandparents that they were mostly silent while they baked Brendan's birthday cake.
Like a puppet, a girl on a string, broke away, learned to fly. If you want her back, gotta let her shine. So
Tensions were thick, but they weren't going to let it ruin Brendan's birthday. Happy birthday, Brighton. He is outgoing. When the kids left for school, Michael and Lucille did finally sit down to discuss the situation. They agreed they may have overreacted with the recommendation for adoption or abortion, and that this baby would be a blessing even if they were unplanned. At school, Wendy came over to Frankie while he was talking to Brighton. She complained that she had found a letter in her locker that Hunter had dumped her and moved without ever telling her. She was heartbroken. Frankie pretended to be shocked. He promised to be there to support her. After school, Wendy brought Frankie to meet her mom so they could tell her about the pregnancy together. Wendy broke the news to her mother, Chantal. Chantal was furious and cried. She called her daughter a slut. Wendy immediately felt the need to barf and excused herself to the bathroom while her mother cried. Chantal told Frankie he ruined her daughter, and they were both abominations in God's eyes. Frankie was left speechless. When he finally worked up the courage, he promised Wendy's mother that he would take care of her, but she wouldn't listen to him. When Wendy came back from the bathroom, her mother told her that she didn't even know her anymore. She told Wendy to get her stuff and get out of her house, and never return. Wendy couldn't believe that she was being kicked out by her own mother. She had nowhere to go. Frankie told her to come home with him. He would work it out with his parents and would not leave her homeless. Lucille agreed that she could come to the apartment for now, and they would work out an arrangement later. Wendy's pregnancy continued to progress as normal. Franklin was doing well with homeschool, but he was also struggling with the looming fatherhood. One afternoon, while Chantal was watching TV, she recognized a familiar face. It was Michael giving a speech. She recognized him as the stepfather to her daughter's now baby daddy. Chantal knew what she needed to do. She went down to the Capitol building and confronted Michael. She told him he needed to pay for what his son did to her daughter. She demanded $1 million or she will go to the press and tell them about the pregnancy. Michael told her no. Chantal threatened that soon then he would see Wendy's baby bump plastered over every newspaper in town. She told him to kiss his career goodbye. After work, he told Lucille everything that happened with Chantal. She then went to go see her son and tell him everything too. Frankie was appalled to hear, but Wendy's mother was planning. He not only wanted to protect his stepfather and mother, but he also wanted to protect Wendy. That night he went to Wendy's old home and broke in. Chantal was surprised to see him. She yelled at him to get out of her home before she called the police. Back at home and unknowing what Frankie was doing, Wendy went into labor. When Chantal tried to walk away from Frankie, he followed her an STR and angled her to D at TH. He quickly carried her body out of the house and buried it in the yard. Wendy's younger sister slept peacefully in the house, unaware what was happening. While one life ended, a new one was just beginning. Hello 1970s heiress, Lily. Wendy was Detective Gregory received word from a worried neighbor of strange objects in Wendy's childhood home's backyard. He went to go investigate. In digging up the strange pile, he did find decomposing parts of Chantal's body. He immediately went to go notify next of kin. Wendy was surprised to see him at her home ringing the doorbell. He let her know that they had found her mother's body buried in the backyard of her home. Wendy was shocked and saddened by the news. Detective Gregory asked Wendy if she knew anyone who would want to hurt her mother. Wendy said no. She then fell to the ground in terror. Detective Gregory told her he would let her know if he found out any updates. Frankie heard her crying and came out to see what was going on. Despite Wendy's sadness, he still did not feel bad for what he did because it was best for the family. The next week, while Wendy was picking out an urn for her mother, she had no idea her mother's K-Wundler was standing right next to her. Frankie's family all came to the funeral to support Wendy. Wendy felt too upset to give a eulogy. Wanting to make Chantal roll over in her grave, Frankie offered to do it. He gave a eulogy thanking Chantal for always accepting him into their family to avoid any suspicion. Wendy thought the word choice was weird, but assumed he was just trying to make her mother look good in her final moments. Detective Gregory also attended, and Frankie's words were more to keep him off of his back. Frankie knew he needed to be more careful now. What Wendy did not know was the house came with the fallout shelter due to the Cold War. Frankie decided next time he gets urges he needs to keep it all contained to the fallout shelter where nobody will find anything. Frankie was getting used to fatherhood. It was also time for the two teens to age up to young adults. Wendy is a foodie. Frankie is a woohoo lover. Frankie went out bowling with Wendy, Brighton, and Rebecca. The girls enjoyed chatting while the boys played. Frankie also got an idea that if he ever got caught on his killing sprees, he wanted Wendy to be his wife so she could never testify against him. He proposed to her immediately. She said yes. Wendy had a blast planning the wedding, picking a cake, and picking flowers. At the ceremony, Lucille walked her baby boy down the aisle.
I've got a sweeter song than the birds in the tree.
Wendy walked down the aisle by herself since both of her parents were deceased.
Well, I guess you say what can make me
The two exchanged vows.
my girl, my girl, my girl, talking about my girl, my girl.
Mr. and Mrs. Storm. Wendy was so excited to be a wife. Frankie was so excited that she was now trapped. They had a party after the wedding and enjoyed cake together. Frankie gave a toast thanking God for his smoking hot wife.
Yeah, I don't need no money.
They then danced the rest of the evening away together.
I got all the riches, baby. One man can claim.
Lily aged up to a toddler.
Keep it sweat, this one you save. Better lock it,
A charmer.
get taking this one to the grave.
Our sweet little heiress.
And I know you won't tell what I said, 'cause two can keep a secret if one.
At night, while Wendy was sleeping, Frankie would get up and leave the house. He would go on nightly strolls around the neighborhood. This evening, he found a woman by herself smoking a cigarette. He approached her and introduced himself. She said her name was Lindsay. She was a little confused why he was walking up to her. He told her it was way too late and too cold for her to be out. He asked where she lived. She told him that she lived a few blocks away. Frankie offered for her to come to his house to warm up. Lindsay did feel charmed by his flirtatious demeanor, but ultimately she said no because she barely knew him. Her rejection angered Frankie, and he told her that she did not have a choice. He then grabbed her and took her to his home. No one else was out, so no one saw it. Lindsay was confused when she woke up alone in a basement. She walked up the stairs and tried to escape, but when she went to the door, she was met with Frankie. They argued. Lindsay yelled at him to let her leave, and Frankie asked if she was going to be nicer to him now. She told him no, and that he deserves to rot in prison. Not wanting her to threaten his life or his family, he K1-led her. He took her clothes and possessions and stored them in the closet in the fallout shelter. He then cleaned himself off and buried her body in the yard before Wendy ever woke up. Wendy has been experiencing nausea and vomiting for the past few weeks since their wedding. Her doctor diagnosed her with pregnancy. Lucille and Michael hosted an extravagant party for his re-election campaign. Since they were married now, Frankie and Wendy could be back in the public eye. Frankie, though, was catching interest with the bartender. While he was following the work around all night, Wendy announced her pregnancy to Michael and Lucille.
Something I want to tell you, but
Frankie went to go find Wendy, who was watching music performance by Rebecca and Brighton.
swear on your life.
He told her that he didn't feel well and was going to go home, but she could stay at the party and have fun. In reality, he went outside and found the employee who had caught his eye all night. The woman named Carmen was confused when she woke up in a basement. She did not remember anything from the night before. When she went to leave, she realized the door was locked, and she was trapped. She found a notebook in her room. There was a note from Frankie that said if she followed his orders, she would not be K-led. Meanwhile, upstairs, Frankie was pretending to be normal father. Wendy had no idea there was a trapped woman right below her. Frankie acted completely normal, while Wendy was giving Lily a bath. Frankie grabbed a plate of food for Carmen and brought it downstairs. He sat down with her while she ate. She asked him why he was doing this and why he was holding her hostage. Frankie answered honestly. He told her as a kid he never had control over anything when it came to his father. So after he K1-led his father, he was taking back his control and imposing it on others. Carmen told him there were different ways of having control that did not include harming other people. Frankie agreed that there were, but he told her that this was his way, and no one was going to be able to tell him to change anymore. One cold night, Frankie decided he was ready for a rampage and wanted to do it at a sorority house in the next town over. His goal was to maybe woohoo with a few of the girls and K1 any witnesses. When he walked into the home, he was immediately greeted by a woman who was eating a late dinner. She immediately knew he was an intruder and threw food at him to try to get him to leave. She told him if he didn't leave, she was going to call the police. So instead, Frankie turned and Kay led her before she had the chance. He then headed upstairs to continue his raid. He first walked into a bedroom and woke up the girl by trying to kiss her. Still half asleep and not knowing what was going on, she first kissed him back. Then, when she realized what was happening, she pushed him off and fled the room. He followed after her and STR her before she had the chance to warn any of her other roommates. He then went into another room and woke up another sleeping girl to try to woohoo. Same as everyone else, the woman was not happy to see him and she yelled at him to leave her room. Frankie explained he was not going to leave, and if she would not woohoo with him, then he was going to kill her. The girl tried to run, but Frankie kept pace with her. He then K1 led her too. He then went into another bedroom to try to find someone else. This girl woke up herself from all the commotion. She noticed blood on his clothes and immediately ran. Unfortunately for her, Frankie had taken the other staircase and had beat her downstairs. She met a similar fate to the other girls. The sun began to rise and Frankie did not have time for any more victims or to clean up his mess. Detective Gregory was called to the scene as well as a medical examiner. He examined all the poor girls' bodies and tried to find them RDR weapon. He thought the way that these women were K1 led was similar to Wendy's mother. He was on Frankie's trail, but needed proof. Carmen woke up from her nap and was surprised to see a woman at the door. Wendy was trying to pick the lock with no success. Carmen walked up to the door and tried to get her attention. Wendy yelled through the door that she was trying to get her out. Frankie returned home from dropping off Lily at school. He was confused where Wendy was and searched for her around the house. Shailene was still here, so he knew Wendy was around somewhere. His heart sank as he realized she must be in the bunker. He rushed down there. He found her at the door and demanded to know what she was doing down here. Wendy demanded to know what he was doing with a girl locked up. She told him she was going to file for divorce and take the kids. She called him a monster. He told her that she couldn't do this to him. He then STR her to death, whispering in her ear that he loved her and she was making him do this. Carmen watched in horror at her only chance of escape being taken away from her. That night, once he got both the kids to bed, he buried Wendy's body in the yard. He then tucked Lily into bed and mourned his wife, who he never thought would end up as one of his victims. In the morning, he brought Carmen a week's worth of food and told her he was going out of town to a wedding for his Aunt Susan and would be back in a few days. He then went to DC with the kids and stayed with his parents for Susan and Tamati's upcoming wedding. Everyone was excited to see them. Meanwhile, an arrest warrant had been put out for Frankie for draft dodging. He could tell the family had recently fled the home as an excuse to also look around his home for emerald weapons, and clothes were left in the dryer. He noticed the ladder outside and knew he hit the jackpot. he knew he must be hiding something below. He figured the bookcase was a fake and moved it out of the way, finding the door. Downstairs, he was appalled to find a woman locked in a room. Unlike Wendy, he was able to successfully pick the lock and enter the room. Carmen woke up to the sound of the door opening and was immediately relieved to see an officer. She knew she was safe now and told him everything. She even kissed him. She was so thankful for him saving her life. She walked home thankful to be free, but traumatized from Shailene aged up. A charmer like her sister. With the Civil Rights Act officially passed, Susan and Tamati could finally get married. All three of their children walked down the aisle with them. Adeline, the maid of honor, Griffin, the flower pal, and Booker, the ring bearer. Susan was ecstatic to finally marry her love and be Mrs. Weishaupt, Mr. and Mrs. Weishaupt. The kids all enjoyed partying at the reception. Michael was so excited for the newlyweds. What the family didn't know while partying, though, was that Detective Gregory was about to crash the party. He approached Frankie and told him that he was under arrest for multiple murders and kidnapping. The family was shocked as he was arrested in front of everybody. Lucille couldn't believe her baby boy would do something like this, and it drastically changed their life over the next few months. Tess quit. Michael lost his re-election. Lucille told Michael she would understand if he wanted to leave her since her son ruined his reputation. But Michael told her he had vowed for better or worse, and he was never going to leave her. The family was shunned from DC life, so they sold their apartment. Frankie was convicted and in prison. Lucille was given full custody of the children. She legally changed the last names of both of the girls to rid themselves from the storm to Olivia in honor of their mother's maiden name. Reitman was injured in Vietnam War but returned home alive. He also changed his last name to Brown to avoid being known as Frankie's brother. The family moved to an estate in California. Brighton aged up to a young adult. To celebrate his birthday, he went down to a local bar where he saw a woman playing guitar. He thought she was incredibly talented and was hypnotized by her playing. When she finished playing, the two sat and talked for hours, getting to know each other. Brighton thought she was beautiful. The woman whose name was Tinsley felt the same way about Brighton, and over the next few months they went on multiple dates. After the fourth date, Brighton asked her to officially be his girlfriend. She agreed. The two lovebirds spent all of their time together. Brighton was happy to finally have his rainbow at the end of the storm that was his father and brother. After a year of dating, he took Tinsley to a garden maze and they ran around for hours. When they made it to the center of the maze, he got down on one knee and proposed to her. Tinsley said yes. Frankie had been sentenced to the DATH penalty. Lucille went to visit him in DC and prison one last time. She was disappointed with the man he had become, but she was still his mother. As she waited for him, she cursed Maxwell for making him into the man he was now. Frankie was surprised to see his mom. She had not visited him since his guilty verdict. She was angry with him. He asked how Lily and Shailene were. He mentioned he couldn't wait to see them one day. Lucille told him he did not understand the severity of the situation. She said he was going to do one in jail and he would never see his children again. She told Frankie he not only ruined his life, but he ruined the family's reputation as well, and he needed to understand that. She told him she would always love him, but she did not recognize him anymore. She then stood and left. When she returned home to California, she was grateful to be greeted at the door by little Shailene. The kids were all cooking dinner together to welcome Lucille back home. The family had grown closer together over the past year in the wake of Frankie's storm. Lucille did her best to be the motherly figure for her granddaughters that they needed. Brighton and Tinsley frequently practiced for their first kiss as husband and wife. And that weekend at Brighton's parents' backyard, surrounded by their closest friends and family, they tied the knot. Michael was their efficient Mr. and Mrs. Brown. The two honeymooned off the West Coast in a private beach. They were so excited for the life they were about to begin as husband and wife. Shailene aged up. An art lover. She looks so much like her mother. Rebecca aged up to a young adult. She is cheerful. Michael and Lucille couldn't believe their baby girl was